I'm David Hirschfelder and I am a film composer, and I have the rare privilege of scoring the music for and being musical director for Shine. Literally the first thing I did was look through the script and give comments on some of the vernacular about the relationship between David and his teacher, the professor, who was played by John Gielgud. And so we came up with ideas like what would a teacher and a student talk about, for example. And I would say, well, a classic thing is if you're playing a piece, my teacher used to say this, slow down, it's not a race. And so they said, oh, we like that, and they scribbled that down. Moments of genius was another thing that came up, is this idea. There's a few little catchphrases that we bandied about that ended up in the script.
Don't you just love those big fat chords? You have to tame the piano, David, or it'll get away from you. It's a monster. Tame it, or it'll swallow you whole. Coming along nicely, David.
The next thing was choosing the music, helping them choose the music. And of course, a lot of that was determined by David's repertoire and what he liked. And I suggested you need to speak with David and find out his pieces that mean the most to him. And of course, a lot of it's factual. You know, he did play the Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, and he did play a lot of Liszt pieces, and Sospiro, and to name a few. And the Chopin Polonaises and things. These were all part of his repertoire. So we set to work getting a long short list of piano pieces that would become featured as part of his musical journey and also used as underscore. The first meeting I had with David Hirschfelder, I was flown to his home in Bellingen, and I was greeted by Gillian, and delightful woman, and Jane, Scott, and Scott Hicks were both there as well. And we had dinner, and David was, and I met David then, and we are talking, and he was the most remarkable person I've ever met, because he was talking constantly about music, and he was mixing discussion about all the pieces he liked to play, mixed with aphorisms about. He was constantly talking about traffic analogies and saying there's a lot of traffic and you've got to be careful, otherwise you might have a crash, and you've got to be careful, you've got to watch the traffic in order to survive. And I thought, what's he talking about? He's talking about all the notes. There's a lot to think about when you're playing the piano, and it is a bit like driving a car in very intense traffic. And I instantly got a lot of an insight into his character, but I also noticed as he was playing, and we sat, and he played beautifully, and he could play anything from memory. He had a remarkable memory. I mean, he's really prodigious talent. And he could talk the entire time, and then he could sing other tunes. While he's playing one tune, he could be singing and talking about another piece. And he did this quite often, and it astounded me. But I quickly realized that we're going to have to record him. We can't record him traditionally with a microphone, because when he's playing his best, he's talking and singing, and that's what he likes doing. So we devised, I said, we have to devise a method of recording him where we can record him electronically using, and I discovered I knew already of a keyboard which had solenoid motors, so that every time you hit a note, that is recorded by a reverse player piano mechanism, and then that is then translated into data, which is fed into a computer. And so we could record, and also the pedals, so the sustain pedals, so we could record every aspect of David's playing using technology, reverse player piano technology called a disclavier. And then that way he was free to talk and sing and play while he's playing, without us worrying about the microphones picking that up. And then we would then play back his recordings from the computer. and set up the microphones and get different perspectives, even get different pianos. We could have a grand piano playing the same piece, and then we could take the same data and hook it up to a smaller upright disclavier. So you'd get that small upright sound, so we could literally cross-fade from a rehearsal piano to a full concert instrument. Even though I'm classically trained, I produced a lot of, I went through a stage in my earlier career of being involved with a lot of contemporary music and contemporary artists. So David was the first classical musician I worked with, and he was also a really unique character in that he was completely eccentric. It's fine coming from me, I'm rather eccentric myself, but he was very, he spoke in riddles, and he still does, and so I decided the best way to capture his artistry, which is really astounding. I mean, he's an incredible pianist, an incredible talent. And the best way to capture him was to record him electronically, as we described, and really to allow him, I quickly learned the best way is to make him feel comfortable so he could play in the environments that he wanted to. And so we recorded him in a number of ways. We recorded him in a room like this on a disclavier. We also recorded him in concert because he liked playing for people. So because it didn't matter, we could record his performance on the disclavier at a small concert auditorium and just take all the recordings and edit them together with the other recordings we did in private. And this is where he's rather like Glenn Gould. He would like to have a lot of noise around him while he was playing and practicing. Glenn Gould was famous for practicing with the television going and the radio going, and he would encourage his cleaner to vacuum the house because he said it made him focus on what he was actually doing. David Hirschfelder seemed to have that same sort of focus. And I remember one time he was playing a Liszt piece, and we were recording it because we recorded everything he played, his rehearsals, when he was in performance mode. So we were recording it, and on the radio, Elgar's cello concerto came on, and he started singing along with that while he was playing. And I thought, how are you doing that? I mean, he really is an extraordinary, his mind is an extraordinary music machine. I would say to him, David, we will take all the moments and all the fragments of your performance, and we will glue them together and manufacture a performance. And he said, oh, tragic fragments. And I said, no, magic fragments. That's what we're here to do. We're here to get the magic fragments. Ah, that's positive, magic fragments. I had a team of people. Ricky Edwards was my orchestrator, and also he's a very fine musician and has studied at the Tasmanian Conservatorium, and he worked closely with the actors as well in how to translate the movements of David Hirschfelder and the technique, the visual technique, to what would then be demonstrated on screen. Alex's character needed to be played by a child, and I thought, and that was Scott's idea, and I thought, well, that makes sense, obviously. And Simon came around to our house, Simon Tedeschi, when he was 15. We recorded all the pieces on my little humble piano because it needed to sound intimate and sort of domestic and sort of cozy rather than a big concert sound.
It's very difficult. It's the hardest piece in the world, you know.
Noah was a challenge because Noah had no musical training at all and was not, he'd never played piano. So he was a different, fantastic actor in the way, when you think about how well he, it's really a testimony to his skill that he was so believable as a pianist. But with Noah, and he had some of the trickiest, most challenging music to play. We had a hand double, who I never met as well, because that was recorded in the UK. And my associate Ricky Edwards went and worked closely with a hand double and also with Noah, and was there at the shoot to simulate the piano choreography. Ricky developed an idea of choreography of the piano and the fingers and the hands, so that the actors didn't have to play exactly the right notes. Their hands just needed to be in the approximate position. And then in the case of Noah, the hand double, who's a stunning pianist who is studying at the Royal College of Music, could play all the pieces, and he mimed very accurately for the close-ups. In the case of Jeffrey used to play piano, and being the sort of method actor that he is, and with a great attention to detail, wanted to learn all the pieces, actually to play them.
Bravo, encore. Oh, sock it to us, Liberace.
That's enough.
Jeffrey has no hand doubles in the film. He actually did it all himself. He did all the piano miming. Even though Fly with the Bumblebee, he could do all that sort of, and all the hand, it goes, I can't play it properly, but it's all this sort of hand over hand movements with quite, very rapid notes, chromatic notes. And Jeffrey learned all that. Bless him, he just worked so hard on the character. Well, the underscore was, obviously, as anyone can appreciate, with the pantheon of spectacular music icons, these amazing pieces of classical repertoire. I was daunted by being amongst that, but at the same time I thought, well, it's an honour to be there, but we'll get that out of the way and focus on telling the story. Now, what do we have to do? We have to tell the story of the emotional vulnerability of being a musician, how you put your heart out there, you put your heart on your sleeve, you put your neck on the chopping block for critics, you go into competitions, you're competing against other musicians. So it's, I think they use the terminology, it's a blood sport. I think that's what Roger Woodward actually said, music competitions are a blood sport for ageing dowagers. And as harsh as that sounds, there's an element of truth in that.
It's a tough game, isn't it, Roger? It's a blood sport.
As a young child, I experienced piano competitions, and they undid me. And in fact, they turned me into a composer and someone who had stage fright. So I could identify with David's character. So I really sat down and I just thought about, we want something that's a minimal piece, and I just came up with a sort of, just a very simple melody, which is, rather than trying to juxtapose, if you like, the complexity of the language of the classics, I wanted to juxtapose that with something that was simple, like a sigh, like a simple thought process about what it's like to be on stage and what it's like to perform, and also the whimsical nature of David's character and how vulnerable he was, and the hardship he had. And there was a lot of pathos to his character and his journey, and a lot of beauty and nobility. And I just tried to come up with a very simple melody that encapsulated all those qualities about him. And then, having given it all this thought, you just allow your subconscious to do its thing, and it just pops out. So I had this rolling movement, which I can't really play from memory because it was 20 years when I wrote it. But I wanted this rolling feeling, like he's rolling along, father's pushing him along, and they're going past a fountain, and the fountain's doing this, so there's water. And so I wanted this rolling movement, and I guess these are the ideas that come to you. And of course I wanted a piano to be the rolling, so the piano symbolises David's anxiety about going to a lesson and being pushed, but excitement at the same time. And and I use that theme quite a bit also to do with his competitions music, because I think I used that music when his father was walking him along after he lost.
Here they come. Did he win or lose? Margaret! He lost. Now we'll cop it.
A film like this, which is beautifully shot and beautifully crafted, and every shot is actually planned by Scott and by his team. And so it's like responding to a moving painting. And that's what movies are. It's why I like writing music for them, because you're articulating the composition of the image with sound that neither overshadows but nor can be meaningless wallpaper. It has to be the right sort of framing for the pictures. You're framing the picture in sound, and you're framing the dialogue in sound. So you become like a frame, and also sometimes a sort of a pedestal, and sometimes a bit of a motor to push things along. So these are the sort of, I guess, metaphors that music put into a film. They give it the momentum, they give it the, they sometimes a few simple notes. And I mean, I learned this trick from studying a lot of Bernard Herrmann's work, how brilliant he was at coming up with such a simple, maybe 2 or 3 note motif, and just using that to burrow into the audience's subconscious and to draw them into the pictures. And that's our job as a film composer, is to draw the audience into the pictures. And it's not that the pictures need the help, it's just that it's a good way to hypnotise. Music is a great sort of fun way, I get to have the fun of hypnotising the audience and drawing their attention to those camera moves that you mentioned, and even a little look of the eyes, you know, I mean. And sometimes I scored some scenes. There was one scene I scored, and Armin Muller-Stahl did this amazing thing with his eyes. It looked so scary and powerful, and it said so much about the seething sort of complexity of his character. And I wrote this music, but in the end, rightfully, the music was not used, and I always use the term bus stops. You know, you write the music and there's bus stops where you can get off the bus and allow the film to be naked. And there were some scenes where the music had to be silent because the drama was so powerful, you didn't want to intrude on it with music. But sometimes you don't know that until you've written the music. That's just the way it is.
You want to destroy your family. I'm sorry. David, if you love me, you will stop this mess. You will not step out that door. David, if you go, you will be punished.
It's a collaborative process where we all have to be open and all willing to take a risk that an idea will fail. And if you don't try an idea boldly and are prepared for it to fail, then you're going to write and make, well, safe material.